Today on CityCast DC, the Washington Post has announced that Elazar Sontag is going to be its new food critic, which means that Tom Sietsema, who held the job for 26 years, is finally free to dish about what life was really like as the most powerful man in DC's restaurant scene. I talked to Tom about the way the dining world has evolved, the way the critic's job has changed, and whether he'd actually make me pay if we go out to dinner together. He also let slip some hints about what he's going to do next. Today is Thursday, November 13th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Tom, good to see you.
Hey, good to be back. Thank you for having me.
So you spent like 20 years as the food critic for the Washington Post. That seems like the greatest job of all time.
Almost 26. And the funny thing is, almost 26, yeah. And my predecessor, Phyllis Richmond, had the job for almost 24. So it's clearly one of those jobs that people don't leave quickly, for the most part.
Well, why did you leave at all?
Well, there's this little thing called a buyout. And my last year was the 25th anniversary of my being a food critic. And I just thought, there are some other things that I want to do and pursue. And, with my job, I didn't necessarily want to come back to the office because my office is basically restaurants.
Uh-huh.
I was spending like 40 plus hours a week in a restaurant. Not that was a big concern. There are a few of us at the Post who had jobs that, obviously you're traveling if you're working in sports or covering the president, or, you're out of the office a lot if you're the food critic, right? And I was. But I just saw this as sort of a nice, someone offering a little pot of money, seed money for what I wanted to do next. And that's been great.
Well, don't keep us in suspense. What you want to do next?
Well, one thing that I've been doing most immediately, I probably want to do a newsletter or something, but you never know what's going to come your way when you make these kind of changes, right? So I might put my newsletter idea on hold until early next year. But right now, most immediately, one of my takeaways from being food critic for so long, the biggest perk to me wasn't so much the expense account as the ability to just invite anyone to dinner and join me. And I love that. So what I've started to do is host in my home Lamburger Night. And Lamburger Night is held early in the week. I cook for 5 or 6 people who don't know each other, right?
Yeah.
From different walks of life. In fact, my next Lamburger Night includes an Uber driver from Afghanistan who came over here 6 months ago. And I was so fascinated with his story. I said, I don't want this to end, but I'm doing these Lamburger Nights, and I'd love to have you join us. And it's been really fun. It's just a way for people to get together, share their stories, and sort of make some sense of what's going on in the world right now. I think that invitation into someone's home is really important. I think a shared meal with wine is awesome. I've enjoyed that for so long, and I sort of want to replicate that in my home for people who might be interested in meeting each other.
Did my invitation get lost in the mail? What happened, man?
Well, hey, stay tuned. It's only like 5 or 6 people at a time. And I'm trying to get really diverse people too. It'd be easy to just invite a lot of media people, but
I know we suck.
But I wanted people from, I know, no, you're fascinating. And we're all fascinating, right? And I do love fellow journalists. They've always got great stories and everything, but so do people from other walks of life.
Well, let me be a fellow journalist for a second.
Sure.
Now that you're free from the Post and from being the face or the hidden face of the Washington Post, dish a little bit about the restaurant scene.
Dish a little bit.
What is it that you always wanted to be able to, what trend or habit did you always want to write about that you never got to?
That's one of the reasons I left too, because I was pretty much able to do all the things I wanted to do multiple times, eating some of the best restaurants in the world. I got to travel a lot. I got to cover DC, which I think is a fascinating food scene. I went undercover as a dishwasher before. When I first got this job, it was the restaurant critic, but I negotiated the title food critic because I thought there was a very important distinction. Restaurants were very specific and sort of limiting. And with being a food critic, there's a food story in everything, right? Or so I think. food is fantasy, it's politics, it's health, it's the day-to-day act of eating and cooking and that sort of thing. And in fact, in 2016, one of my most fun assignments was doing food profiles on the leading presidential aspirants at the time. So I did a food profile of Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump back in 2016. And I interviewed people who had eaten with them, who had served them. I looked at all sorts of video clips. I looked at White House state dinners. Certainly the easiest one to do was Hillary Clinton because she had, started out as first lady and governor, and she had this really long resume and was very interested in food. One of the more challenging profiles was Donald Trump. I really wanted to find something good, and I found that the wine that he made at one time was quite good. But it's interesting. I think, you are what you eat, basically, and you can stretch that a little bit. But I thought it was very interesting. For instance, Donald Trump doesn't drink. Hillary Clinton carries hot sauce in her purse. Bernie Sanders was the most open. His family was the most open. I mean, they were sending me pictures from Sunday night dinners in Vermont and took a photograph of their refrigerator for me, which I thought was really lovely. And there's some stuff that I couldn't print too, stuff that I found out. But I thought, by and large, it was really a fascinating.
But what couldn't you print that you found out?
Well, I can't really talk about that. It was in the process of fact checking. I bargained a fact check because I had a unpleasant story about a politician, and all I needed to know was where that person ate in a foreign country, whether they chose the foreign country's cuisine or went to a French restaurant, which would have been really predictable. And in the process of fact checking, I said, you can either tell me what it was, or I can use this anecdote, which I never used.
I see.
I wish I could go into more detail, but I'm saving it for dinner parties.
Boy, another reason I need to get myself invited. Tell me, you spent these 26 years, as you say, writing about food, which is a much more diverse subject matter than restaurants, but you were also reviewing restaurants. And
sure,
you began this in the age when the big critic for the big metropolitan dominant newspaper could really make or break a place. So restaurants had their whole fortunes in their minds, writing on what you thought. And you worked very hard to do so in a fair way. I'm wondering if you've got any favorite or horror stories of what happened to you along the way.
Well, you spend so much time in restaurants. I mean, a lot of it's not so much a job as a lifestyle in a way, So your whole life would play out in restaurants oftentimes. I've had arguments with my partner, my family, or, you're interviewing a VIP or something. It's kind of an intrusive way to go about one's life in a way, right? Horror stories. I don't really have horror stories. Most of my stories are fun stories, about things that went awry or I got to have dinner with Jeff Bezos one time, which was fascinating. And we ate at Minibar, which he had bought out. And we had cocktails.
Meaning he had taken the whole place out for the night.
He had taken the whole place out tonight. This is shortly, maybe a year or so after he bought the Washington Post and the Amazon board was in town. And he bought out Minibar for a cocktail reception. They bought out Minibar, the adjacent restaurant by Jose Andres, for dinner. And, if you've ever been in there, it's sort of like the Starship Enterprise with 6 seats going this way and 6 seats going that way, as I remember it. He was on the end with no one on the other side of him. And much to my horror, I'm going from cocktails and I'm being led up to the seat next to him. And I realized there's no one on the other side. And I've just met this guy 5 minutes earlier, right? And he wanted to know, why don't I have any picture of you? And I said, oh, well, I'm the food critic and we try and do our business anonymously and all that sort of thing. He was really fascinating. I should say the dinner was 3 hours long, 30 courses, and we didn't change seats, okay? So I had a little chunk of time with Jeff Bezos.
That's a tough night to spend with the guy who signs your paycheck.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I thought he was really fascinating. After he got past the niceties, he knew so much more about food and wine than a lot of rich people do, I will say. He knew what he was eating and drinking, and he was a lot of fun. He talked about Warren Buffett not being a very adventurous eater, and swapped a few stories about fellow billionaires and traded some stories about our lives. He did say he bought the Post for a song, $250 million. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Just a song.
Yeah.
I assume he picked up the tab.
He did pick up the tab.
In those 26 years, are there any places where you believe that what you wrote, what you determined as a critic, really did end a restaurant or force it to make radical changes?
Well, probably the restaurant review that probably most people know me for is my original review of Founding Farmers, which I just could not understand its popularity, and I wanted to be really rigorous in the investigation, and I went 7 times. I went for breakfast, I went for lunch, I went for dinner, I went back for lunch, back for dinner. I ate there as a single, I ate there with 4 people, and I felt by the time I sat down to write, it was not so much farm to table as farm to fable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have a big social media campaign there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I had a lot of people who said I was wrong, that it was their favorite restaurant, but I had a lot of people who told me I was right too, and that they couldn't understand its popularity either. But recently, right before I left the job, I went back to re-review it, and I found it somewhat better than it was during that initial review. But I just remember that resonating. People would, find out what I did at cocktail parties or whatever, and they go, "Oh, you're the guy who wrote about Founding Farmers." That will be on my tombstone. He introduced sound checks and he read about Founding Farmers. I do think, though, and obviously, credit to Founding Farmers, they're still open. So, so much for the power of a critic, right?
Well, so, I'm curious how you thought about, particularly with the pans, which I know is not anyone's favorite part. I guess there's probably some people who it is their favorite part, but I don't think it was yours. Founding Farmers, as an example, this is a big place. It has an incredibly, it must pay a ton of rent for their spaces. As you say, they have a big marketing and social media budget. But like if I started a restaurant, and I'm scraping together, every nickel I can find and barely hanging on, and let's say you go to it and it sucks. Do you feel differently about giving me a scathing review?
Oh, absolutely.
Given that I'm like a nobody?
Yeah. In the first place, I was lucky to have the resources to go to restaurants as many times as I felt necessary, right, before reviewing them. And my general rule was 3 times going to a restaurant before I sat down to write about it. In some cases, like Founding Farmers, I went 7 times because I really wanted to eat pretty much the entire menu. People love rave reviews. They love pans. The truth is most restaurants are like B plus C in the middle there. And I had the budget, fortunately, to scout restaurants, go in once and see if it was worth a Washington Post review, right? So if you're a mom and pop in Greenbelt or Springfield or something like that, and you're just doing okay, whatever cuisine, I'm probably not going to review that because why would you do that? I mean, it doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't do anything for readers, really. And it's kind of a waste of space in the paper and bandwidth and readers' time. And I felt, especially towards the end, time was of the essence. I really felt responsible about writing about places that people could react to, hopefully positively.
At Mosaic Theater, don't miss a New York Times critic pick and must-see play of the season, A Case for the Existence of God. From the award-winning screenwriter of The Whale and MacArthur genius Samuel D. Hunter, A Case for the Existence of God is about 2 fathers from very different backgrounds who form a powerful bond of friendship. With humor and hope, the play illuminates the crisis of male friendships and demonstrates how we can learn to communicate over divides of race, class, and sexuality. A Case for the Existence of God plays November 13th through December 7th at the Atlas Performing Arts Center. Get your tickets now at mosaictheater.org. Life can flip on a dime. 1 minute, everything's normal, and the next, someone else's mistake shakes your world upside down. And that's when you need a team you can count on. NACE Law Group has been standing up for DC families for decades, fighting for neighbors hurt by medical malpractice, wrongful deaths, and serious injuries. They don't just settle quickly or push papers. They dig in, fight hard, and make sure every client gets the justice they deserve. And here's something that I personally love about them. They are a longtime supporter of this very podcast. Because just like us, and just like you, they care about this community and the folks who call it home. So if you've been hurt or someone that you care about has, just pick up the phone. Call NACE Law Group. They'll stand with you, fight for your family, and make sure your rights are protected. And who knows, maybe you'll even see him at a CityCast live show. Visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com. That's WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com.
You know, when most of us want to learn a new language, it's not because we're dying to memorize grammar tables or ace a quiz. It's because we actually want to speak it out in the real world with real people. And that's what Babbel is great at, getting you there fast. Hey, it's Michael Zibiak, Chief Revenue Officer here at CityCast. My daughter's a senior in high school, and after graduation, we're taking a father-daughter trip to Spain. And right now, my Spanish is, let's just say, very high school level. Shout out to Senior Patty from Syosset High School. You tried. When we're in Spain, I'd love to do more than just ask where the bathroom is. I want to be able to chat with locals, order tapas, and actually connect, not just read the menu and point. So I'm starting with Babbel. It's all about small steps, big wins, and it's super easy to fit into my life. Honestly, with how busy things get here at CityCast, I love that Babbel's bite-sized, 10-minute lessons fit right into my day, between meetings or over my morning coffee. I'm excited to pick up some real-world Spanish before we go, so we can experience Spain like locals, not tourists. Doesn't that sound better? Right now, Babbel's got a special deal for our listeners. Get up to 55% off your subscription at babbel.com/citycast. That's BABBEL.com/citycast for up to 55% off. Rules and restrictions may apply. Gracias and adios.
So you started out in this job. I mean, there's technology changed on you in a radical way, right? You started out, there wasn't smartphones.
No.
You would, if you took a picture of your food, everyone would know, like, oh, that guy must be a food critic.
Sure.
Nowadays, everyone takes a picture of their food with their phone. You know, how did it change your ability to go incognito? And like, what else does it change about the dining experience? I mean, people have so many ways of becoming informed.
That's such a good question. I mean, technology is friend and foe for a critic, I think. Now critics can blend in with everyone else, checking their texts, secretly writing notes themselves and looking like they're just checking headlines or texts, right? We can take pictures of our food. That didn't exist early on, and I was taking notes in the men's room or under the table or something like that. And it was really hard to do. You really had to concentrate on what was going on, and you're doing this furtively and quickly, and you want to make sure you were quoting the funny thing that the waiter said and getting the color of the wall right, and remembering all the different sauces and presentations and all the different plates that you are trying. So it's a lot more work than people realize. Now you see on Instagram and elsewhere, people just stretching the cheese or this beautiful food that's recorded. But I felt like it was a lot more work back then just recording the different meals, mentally or otherwise. Yeah.
I'm curious what you make of Washington's restaurant industry and restaurant culture writ large. And I think of, you were sort of, I imagine, you're in this sort of cross position where on the one hand, there are a lot of people in the industry, people who love food, who think, we should celebrate our city's food industry. We should raise it up. We should, and we're a little insecure here in DC. We should tell the world we've got this great, we're not just some podunk government town. On the other hand, your job specifically was hold these people to a very high standard.
Sure.
And go in there as the face of or as the agent of the reader to determine, is this place worth you blowing a bunch of your paycheck?
Mm-hmm.
And I assume you had moments where people were saying, like, why are you saying so many bad things about us? We're just trying to make the city better. How did you interact with that?
I think where it really changed a little bit, I always saw myself as an advocate for the diner, for sure. I did this weekly chat every Wednesday for an hour where I heard from people all over the world, really, with their etiquette questions, with their restaurant problems, where should I eat in Paris, those kinds of things. And it was probably the most important hour of my week because I got to hear what was on people's minds around the country, around the world, in the area. And I got to help people solve their problems, right? And when I would investigate restaurant problems very often, I would find that the person who said that they had to wait for an hour for their appetizer. Do you realize how long that is? Is that really true? And I'd have restaurants sending me, receipts with the timestamps on it, right? They actually waited 8 minutes or something like that,
Yeah.
which is no big deal. But I think people very often take their anger out on the hospitality industry in a way that they would never do with their lawyer, their dentist, or their doctor, or anyone else, because it is the hospitality business.
Yeah.
But I think what really changed for me was during COVID. I never stopped reviewing restaurants. I would do themed rounds of Japanese or Celebration or Ethiopian or whatever, and try and do one restaurant each in Maryland, Virginia, and DC during that time. But, you get on the phone with people, because I was reviewing takeout for the most part, right? And, you talk to people, and people would very often cry on the phone. This is so hard. I never anticipated this. And so I'm human. I get it, And so I think my relationships changed a little bit during that time, with restaurants, and especially in Washington, because with everything that we've been dealt here, it hasn't just been, a labor situation and prices and tariffs and all that. It's been a tipping situation. I sometimes see restaurants as Job-like characters, what next?
Right.
What is going to befall them, right?
Right.
The little miracle is that they survive, and they continue opening, and they continue being creative and making our lives more worth living, I think.
It's not that different from newspapers.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
I'm curious if there's a pet peeve you had about the restaurant scene that was your biggest.
Oh, wow. Pet peeves. I hate it. Have you been here before? Let me tell you about our theme. Or this is the worst, and diners hate this too, is, we course everything out for you, and the food comes out as it's prepared. That's got to stop. I mean, that's fine if you're in a Spanish tapas restaurant, but few other places, right? And it's all about the convenience for the kitchen, not about the diner, right? Like, what happened to an entree coming after an appetizer and dessert coming in a timely fashion? That is traditional, and it's there for a reason, right? But I think a lot of restaurants have started to do that. Like, everything's tapas, everything's small plates, everything comes out at once. And it's so irritating, especially if you want to relax with your friends. And I get it. Tables need to turn in restaurants, right? Because unless people continue to order and eat, they're not making any money on those tables. I get it.
I'm curious how you kept being the advocate for the diner front and center. I mean, I think of myself, I don't get to go out to eat that much. And so when I do, it's not always that I am seeking adventure or to have my culinary boundaries pushed, or sometimes I want comfort and don't want to do the dishes.
Absolutely.
That's not that interesting, though. And I imagine the same way a music critic is not going to gravitate towards the most comfortable music. They want something that's interesting and nourishing for the brain. And that's not necessarily what the average diner wants. How did you balance those two things?
Well, lots of people, I mean, look, restaurants fulfill so many different roles. Sometimes it's, and that's why I focus so much on the scenery in restaurants or who went there, because people use restaurants in very different ways. Some people could care less about what food is being served and more about the lighting and the decor and who's there. Other people, as you pointed out, might not want to cook that night. And one of the great things on my watch is DC has always had really good, inexpensive restaurants. They've always had really good expense account restaurants. But the great thing during my 25 years is how many great neighborhood restaurants have opened up. And neighborhood is defined as places that are fairly close to home, not too expensive and convivial, and serve a place that you might want to go to when you don't feel like cooking. The Tuesday, Wednesday night places, right?
Leaving aside different cuisines that go in and out of fashion, are there other sort of big systemic changes in the Washington restaurant scene that you noticed over this 26 years?
Well, I think, restaurants can become political too, right? Who goes there? That has never really changed, but we see people segregating themselves perhaps a little bit more right now. Like, I can't imagine too many Republicans going to Busboys and Poets, for instance, right?
Right. Although
And I
that's a
can't.
place that has like a specific political identity in
Sure,
a
sure.
way
As
that like,
as do a lot of the steakhouses in town too. You
right.
know,
Although,
they
I mean, if you walk into even Butterworth's, it's not
Mhm.
like there's right-wing political posters on the wall. Like you've read, hey, these are the people who hang out here, or there's
Sure.
weird beef tallow stuff. Busboys and Poets is different in that like
A
you
really
actually
good
really
steak free.
you do see like iconography of the left like on the walls.
Sure.
So besides foods coming in and out of fashion,
Mhm.
which happens always and everywhere, are there other big sort of systemic changes in the Washington restaurant scene that you noticed over this 26 years?
Well, certainly, price is a big factor. What I have loved to see is cuisine changes. I think we're celebrating some unsung cuisines, cuisines that haven't gotten a lot of attention before. We have a lot of really varied African restaurants right now at all price scales. It used to be sort of default Ethiopian. Everyone could get around a platter of salads and stews on injera and eat it with their fingers. And now we have really refined African restaurants, with notable chefs behind them, and not just one or two, but multiple. I love that. And it's not like critics weren't writing about these places before, but they weren't all there.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
They certainly weren't in the corridors of power or in popular neighborhoods as they are now, which I think is really cause for celebration.
Right. That places that had been thought of as like that kind of cuisine is only, hole in the walls in the distant suburbs have
Correct.
now become white tablecloth, nice places.
Yeah, I think we're honoring cuisines that might have been ignored or sidelined before, right? And I love, certainly in my last dining guide, what I wanted to do is celebrate, cuisines that might not have gotten as much attention before.
Yeah.
Bon May, the very good Laotian restaurant in Shaw, I think, is one that comes to mind. And these are places that really call to people too, I think. What do they say? Every millionaire loves a baked apple. I think we're all watching our wallets and our budgets right now, right? Everybody. And it has gotten so expensive to eat out, certainly in Washington, but everywhere, really. I
mean, if you've been to a grocery store, as you know, probably from preparing your lamb burgers, eating in's no bargain either these days.
No. But the nice thing about eating out is that someone waits on you and removes the dishes and washes those dishes and hopefully, creates a comfortable environment for you in which to eat too.
So one of the other trends I notice, or changes I notice, is there's a lot more restaurants that are incredibly designed, kind of beautiful, over the top vibe. And, the old cliche is you eat with your eyes too.
Sure.
But what do you make of that? I assume that like any trend, we will soon see like a backlash in places that are sort of intentionally Spartan. But how do you see that going?
Well, it's like the pendulum with cuisines, the years, the Italian, low and high, the French years. Now every other restaurant that seems to open is omakase, Japanese. And I think opulent interiors, Washington has always had those places, but we just have a few more right now. And this is a really tough time to be an opulent restaurant, right? The one that comes to mind is Occidental down near the White House. It's over the top. It's sort of a retro supper club feel to it. Waiters in white jackets. They're bringing back dishes that we might have read about but not actually ever had, like pheasant under glass. I think I read about that. It might have been served on the Queen Mary or something like that.
Right.
But has anyone really ever had it? But they put a lot of research into that, and they put a lot of research into the food and also the design. I just think it's this wonderful retro look that is sort of timeless and comfortable.
And isn't part of it that, like, in an age of social media and Instagram, if you can create either a dish or a whole room that make people want to take pictures, they will then take pictures, share them, and then that effectively is a form of marketing.
Oh, absolutely. Like the 40-layer lasagna at Lardante, or anything that's a hill or a tower, the 37 ingredient salad at Charisma, the very good modern Indian restaurant in Chinatown. Yeah, of course, everyone wants to have one of those must eat dishes, I think. But I think it's also, I've always wanted to celebrate, critics are always chasing the new, new, new. I always thought during my run, it was important to look back too
Mhm.
at places that were enduring. I look at places like Obelisk, downtown, the Townhouse, which is serving pretty much the same menu as was served to me back in 1999 or 2000, right? And that's a good thing. That's a good thing when it comes to fresh, seasonal Italian food and all these homemade products that they're serving there too. It's just a quiet townhouse. Sublime comes to mind, that quietly goes about doing really delicious dishes season in, season out, decade in, decade out. And I think we need to write about those places too, even though my first review could have been my last review of that
Right,
place,
right.
right? Except for the prices.
So before your knowledge gets too out of date, are there spots you think deserve more praise that people should check out?
Let me see. Places that we should check out. Well, I think it's important, one thing that I will do now is identify 6 or 7 places where I'm a known commodity, become a regular there.
Mhm.
And, being a regular has its privileges, right? You can get a table at last minute on a Friday night. They know your drink when you come in. They know where you like to sit. I never got that when I was in my other job because I was never, I never had time to be a regular anywhere, right? But I do tell readers, or I did tell readers that was one of the most important things you can do. And obviously, tip as well as you can. But also, give restaurants a second chance too, like new restaurants in particular. It's a very hard business to start. If you have an okay meal, give it another shot, because you never know if the chef has had a bad night, they're understaffed, the dishwasher broke down, and I realize now when food is so expensive, that's a big ask.
Mhm.
But I do believe in second chances, which is why I went back to Founding Farmers and reviewed it this
And
year.
like, how do you become a regular? Like now that you're able to become a regular, is it just about showing up and tipping well?
It's about showing up, and I think it depends upon where you go. Being a regular at the Inn at Little Washington might be like 2 times a year, right? Because it's such
Right.
an expense and far away for a lot of people too. But I also think, find a little neighborhood place that treats you well and all of that, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Sit at the bar so you don't occupy a whole table. Um, Get to know the people on staff, ask about them. Everyone, we're all plants that need a little water, right? Like,
Right.
get to know people. And that's the thing. I was always introduced very briefly to servers or general managers or chefs or whatever. But what's great about right now is that I can actually ask them, more personal questions, like, not personal, but just get to know them in a friendlier way than when I was covering people. I always felt like I needed to cover people with an arm's distance between us, right?
So when you were on that job,
I couldn't be friends with the people I cover.
you
Let's put it
certainly
that way.
couldn't, and
Yeah,
you made some efforts to have it so people didn't know what you looked like.
sure, I did.
Now you don't have to worry about that. I assume that
No.
even back in the day, a lot of people did know what you looked like. Now that you are no longer the lead restaurant critic, food critic of the Washington Post, do you notice people treating you differently? Are they like are they giving you worse
Well,
tables? What are they
I have
doing?
no. Fortunately, that has not happened. I'd like to think I was fair to people, even if I was negative about them. But no, I had to change all my, I deleted a bunch of Open Table and Resi accounts under different names, and I'm now going as Tom Sietsema to restaurants, and people wonder if chefs have told me we weren't sure if it was someone playing a joke on us or if
Uh-huh.
you actually were going to show up. I've had restaurants offer to pay for my meals, and that's something going forward that I have declined because I have a lot of respect for the industry, and I budgeted money to eat out, maybe not 10 meals a week, but plenty to stay on top of things and check out new places and go back to old places, right? But yeah, people are sometimes surprised, and I might have the chef come and bring the entrees out or something. It's kind of fun. It's kind of nice.
So if you are, you obviously are a person who cares a great deal about food and restaurants, so you're going to continue to eat out a lot. But it's not your sort of official job. Given, I don't know within the world of restaurant cities how fast Washington does or doesn't change compared to other big dining cities. How long do you figure, based on what you've learned so far, how long do you figure you'll still be on top of it with the trends and so on? When do you worry that your knowledge will be dated?
Well, that's a good question. I guess viewers and listeners and readers will have to determine that, right? I still keep up on the news, and people call me with openings and have invited me to media events. And I would just rather go as a regular diner, frankly, right? Because I like to order what I want to order, and I want to eat with whom I want to eat. And my favorite thing is to order appetizers at the bar. So and that's really nice to be able to sort of just eat exactly what you want. And if you want, I don't know, double order French fries and a burger and a gem lettuce salad, instead of trying the octopus or the crudo or whatever, I can do that. And that feels really liberating, actually.
So what of the trends and tastes and ticks of our restaurants, which ones aren't you going to be indulging again because you did them for work and you didn't really like them that much?
Oh, well, you know what? I got really tired of tasting menus. And I get it. A tasting menu is easier for a chef, right? Because he knows how many people are going to show up, and there's a set amount, portions made, and it's set in advance for the most part, right? And I just think I don't like to sit in a restaurant beyond 90 minutes, really. These endless meals that take 3 hours, I need to walk around the restaurant or go out for a little jog between courses or whatever, right? So tasting menus were not my favorite thing towards the end, I will say. Yeah, too much food, and not necessarily food that I wanted to eat primarily for health reasons, I guess.
Are there trends or ticks that you find yourself indulging in more now that you're just going out for you?
Oh, I'm eating more burgers for some reason. I just love a good burger,
I think
right?
for some reason it's because they're really good.
They're really good, and they're not usually really expensive. And everyone does their burger a little bit differently. And yeah, I love a good burger and good fries. And people think it's such a simple thing to do, but it's like a little black dress in a way, right? It's seemingly simple, but not always. I mean, do they toast or not toast the bun? Do they make the buns themselves? What kind of bread do they use? What kind of proportion of fat and meat do they use? And what cut of meat do they use? And there are all sorts of things to make or break a hamburger, I think. So that's been kind of fun.
It's no secret the media is not a great epoch for the media right now, or at least for a lot of different kinds of media. And the number of outlets that have a sort of full-time, full-dress food critic has gone down. I think the number of consumers for food criticism has gone down because there's always been some people who like reading a restaurant review, but there's just as many people who will be only so happy to look at Yelp and see sort of, okay, this one's got so many stars, I'll go there, no problem.
Sure. Or Instagram. Yeah.
And I'm wondering now that you're not doing this full time, who are you relying on? I mean, for criticism, advice, directing you?
Well, I am going to be replaced. I'm really happy about that, and the Post does value that opinion and that voice, and I'm really excited about that. And I think they're going to continue to do it the same way, multiple visits and that sort of thing. But it won't be me doing that. And I think I have my antenna up, but I look forward to reading someone else too. Frankly. And I read, the other critics in town. And, I don't know everyone well, but I certainly am aware of what they do. And I do find, this is a really healthy market for food writing, right? People are serious journalists here. They've got good palates. They have the resources to do the job right. And they've been in the jobs long enough, too, that it gives them some credibility. I think that's important. I sometimes wonder where a lot of people are going to be in 5 or 10 years, right? They might have beautiful Instagram accounts, but it's a lot of work to do those things.
It is. And I don't mean to be like a journalism church lady, but there were certain rules governing you. And if it turned out that you were on the payroll of some of these places, you would have lost your job. That Absolutely. Is not true for someone with their own Instagram account.
Right. And restaurants have to decide, am I going to do a collaboration with this person or not? At least I always knew that the Post paid my way in restaurants and paid to go multiple times. I think that was really important, And I would sometimes go back to fact check, if I wasn't quite sure about the soundtrack or a decor piece, or is the chicken always that dry or always that moist, I was able to go back and fact check those things, right? And that's a real luxury, I think. And it's good for readers, and agree or disagree with me. At least they know my body of work. They, where I've been, where I've written before, and the fact that I went multiple times to restaurants.
Gotcha.
When I had the job, it wasn't that long ago, a month ago. It was really the best. It was really the best job at the Post. It was, getting paid to eat out and write about it and share your knowledge or your experiences with readers was a real privilege. Every job has its good and bad days, right?
What was the worst, just so I know?
Oh, the worst day?
Yeah.
The day before the fall dining guide is due. That's always the worst, because you've got 6 more mini reviews and an intro to write, and you're dealing with photography issues and everything else. Those things are really hard to put together, and people have no idea what goes into them. But it's a whole, it takes a village to get those things published and looking good and hopefully reading well.
Well, Tom Sietsema, thank you so much for being here. And
thank you so much for having me. This has been.
Let's go eat sometime.
I would love that. Maybe not lamb burgers right away, but something else.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And if you want to support conversations like this, then consider becoming a member at membership.citycast.fm. And we will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.
Guess what? CityCast has some news. I'm Sean McPherson, the host of CityCast Twin Cities.
And I'm Jane Sihu, and I'm the host of CityCast Seattle. Hey, if you have a friend in one of our cities, can you text them for us?
Yeah, something, simple like, hey, how's that rash doing? And do you listen to podcasts? Because I have one you're definitely going to like. After that, tell them that CityCast has helped you become more informed, more involved, and more connected to your amazing city.
We're going to help that person you know in Seattle who's been trying to make friends.
And we're also going to do that for that guy you only kind of knew in college who moved back to the Twin Cities after graduation.
Don't we all have that guy?
Yeah, and usually that guy is named Todd.
So did you text them yet?
Jane, let's just wait a minute. We don't want to rush anybody. We'll do a little small talk. How's everything going in Seattle?
Beautiful, beautiful. Fall leaves popping. How about Twin Cities?
Today, beautiful and sunshiny in St. Paul. Okay, Jane, I bet they are done texting by now, and I just want to remind them, hey, you, please tell that friend to subscribe to CityCast Twin Cities or Seattle, wherever you get your podcasts.
Or if you don't want to text them and you're really just on Instagram sending them DMs all the time with like funny videos, send them a DM of our latest videos. You can find us at CityCast Twin Cities or CityCast Seattle on Instagram. Thanks.